this is going to be so fun and very exciting. And I'll tell you, I'm at a different place. We're down in Charleston, and this is our little break to be together with family. So I hauled all my stuff down here because of our incredible special guest today. You're going to love this guy. His name is Dan Clark. I know you probably heard of Dan. He is well known in so many circles in athletics and speaking. And he and I had the most fun event together. I am not going to talk about it until I get him into the studio, because y'all, is epic. All I can tell you is it's epic. But he's my good friend, my partner in crime, and it's almost a living a partner in crime. So I'm going to bring in the man with the plan, my sweet Dan. Yeah, there he is. Hey, darling.
How are you, my beautiful friend? The triple threat: you sing, you speak, and you can make us laugh and cry. I'm telling you what, there's no one else on the planet that has your skill set or your passion.
Well, I'll tell you, that's so sweet of you, because coming from you, that's just massive. And as we were talking before I started recording, Dan, every time I see you pop up on Facebook or read about you somewhere, somehow, your journey to the platform has been totally remarkable. And I just really want you to tell folks how you got from in your life's journey to where you are now, because it's a great story.
Thanks, Jane. Well, in the true spirit of Jeanne Robertson, who's a mutual friend of ours and a dear hero, I think she epitomizes the reality that you don't try to be a speaker. It has to be a calling. And the calling is based on personal authenticity. What gives you the right to take the microphone with enough credibility to change someone's life, to take them to a different place than they can take themselves? So in the true spirit of Jeanne, my journey started out, I played football for 13 years. And one day in a tackling drill, coach blew the whistle, and another player and I ran full speed into each other in a violent head-on collision, smashing my right shoulder into the cutting edge of my fiberglass pads, and we slammed to the ground. And when Lyle got off of me, I had compressed my 7th cervical vertebrae in my neck. I'd severed the axillary nerve in my right deltoid, and I'd suffered a grade 2 concussion, which was brutal. My eye drooped. I had loss of speech. I couldn't talk anymore. My right side was completely paralyzed, and my arm dangled helplessly at my side.
Oh my God.
Coach comes running over. Clark, are you all right? What happened? Rock, I saw roast in my front door. He says, whoa, are you from Charlotte, North Carolina? I'm just kidding you. He says, you better just lay there. I said, whoa. And the doctor that was present on the field, he came over and examined me, pulls the coach aside. He says, Clark's got serious nerve damage. In fact, he might even have serious brain damage. Coach looks at him and says, how will we ever know? Ha! In the true spirit of Jeanne, there's humor in every situation. I said, whoa. Anyway, I stayed paralyzed for 14 months. I went to 16 doctors, 15 of whom told me I would not recover. I would never get any better. And for those of you who are watching and listening, how many of you believe that? How many of you have heard that? What happens if you believe it? You never get any better. And my life spiraled downward until I hit what I thought was rock bottom. And now that I've fought my way back to a 95% recovery, the 3 most frequently asked questions are these. Number 1, Clark, what do you mean you thought you hit rock bottom? And the answer is, nobody ever hits rock bottom, no matter how bad it gets. Nobody ever hits rock bottom. We hit rock foundation. We hit rock belief. We hit the baseline core values and governing principles on which we were raised. Question number 2, why did I keep going to so many different doctors? And the answer is, I kept going from doctor to doctor until I found one who believed I would get better, who reminded us, who taught me that knowledge is power, but it has no heart. Think about it. We don't learn to know, we learn to do. And in the true spirit of Jeanne, all the information in the world is going to make a person successful. It's like the guy who has 3 PhDs, one in philosophy, one in psychology, one in sociology. He doesn't have a job, but at least he can explain why. Bottom line message, reason leads to conclusions, but it is emotion that leads to action. And the third most frequently asked question is, Clark, what took you so long to recover? What took you so long to get better? And the answer is pretty profound. I stayed paralyzed for 14 months because I was asking the wrong questions. Or any of you? I was asking the doctors how to get better when I should have been asking myself why. And once we answer why, how to becomes clear and simple. And here's the profound message of my recovery. When we only focus on the what and the how, we only engage the head, we only engage the brain. But when we add to that a passionate why and a meaningful want, a personal goal, a reason, it connects our head with our heart. And physiologically, our blood pumps more rapidly, our brains fire, and our muscles magnify, which maximizes our performance. And if we only engage on the how and the what, no such inspirational, motivational experience occurs. And I bring that up because as I hit rock bottom in my mind, and I was suicidal, I was at the top of my game, the biggest, fastest, strongest I'd ever been. I was a projected #1 draft pick by the Oakland Raiders into the NFL. And in one day, in 1 minute, my entire dream set, everything I'd worked for, my identity was taken away from me. At that moment of despair, the vice president of the University of Utah, my alma mater, who realized I had become recluse and he was worried about me, he brought me by a cassette tape to listen to by a, quote, motivational speaker by the name of Zig Ziglar.
Oh, wow.
Zig Ziglar before. I thought, well, his mom ran out of names. So I put the tape in and I listened to it and it changed my whole life. He saved my life. Reason why was because he was a storyteller, because I can't remember one thing he taught me as far as facts and figures. Facts tell, stories sell. What I do remember is that he was a master storyteller who took me on an emotional roller coaster ride, just like you do, Jeanne. And the one story that I remember was called Spindletop, about this oil well that gushed out of the ground with such force, it literally destroyed the derrick. And as Zig said, and the man became an instant millionaire. And then he pauses and says, or did he? Had he not always been a millionaire? All he had to do was figure out how to drill deep enough to access that power and that oil and bring it out and refine it and use it as it was meant to be used. And that metaphor, that story alone pricked my conscience. It drove deep into my heart that, Clark, wait a minute, you cannot quit. It's a league rule. There's so much more inside of you. Football is just what you did, is not who you are as a man. And when we identify ourselves in terms of what we do instead of who we are, we become human doings instead of human beings. Unacceptable of significance is what we seek. And in that tape, in that one story in a 45-minute speech, I realized that I needed to fire up and figure out why I needed to get better. What are the benefits? What is my real calling and passion in life? Why was I born? What's God's plan for me? It shifted my entire focus of life. And as I started to get better, I was asked to speak. And as I continued to speak more often, I realized this was a full-time deal if I could just figure out how to do it. I was one of the guys, probably the guy in the country, who invented the high school motivational assembly.
Oh, wow.
And I spoke. So I spoke before the Utah State Legislature, shared my high school program. I had already done it 13 times in different high schools, and they voted unanimously to support me and fund me to speak to every high school in the state of Utah. And then they renewed that contract the next year to speak to every high school and junior high in the state of Utah. So by the end of 1981, going into 82, I had spoken 107 in 170 schools. So now here's the kicker. So Zig Ziglar's coming into Utah at the University of Utah to participate in one of those PMA rallies with Robert Schuller and Dr. Norman Vincent Peale and Ty Boyd. And because he saved my life and I was still in VIP status as an athlete, I positioned myself backstage after I heard him speak. He's walking off stage and I said, Zig, you've literally changed my life, saved my life. Can I take you to dinner? No, I'm coming back to Salt Lake in 3 weeks. Call Lori Majors in my office. see what you can work out. I hounded her every day. Finally, she said, Zig says you can pick him up at the airport. So from the airport to the hotel, it was 15 minutes max. And by the time we pulled into the airport, he was so curious. He says, is there someplace I can see this high school assembly that you've done 170 times? And I said, yeah, I've rented the little ballroom off the foyer of the hotel. I have a little slideshow. I got it all set up. He was so amused that I had so much confidence that I could convince him I could speak to him, that we went into this room, and 45 minutes later, he's crying, I'm crying. He just gives me a standing ovation, mano a mano. Next week, he flies me to Dallas to speak to his company. Next week, he sponsors me in the National Speakers Association.
Oh, gosh.
Where I met him in Chicago. Ty Boyd was the president of NSA that year, but it was at that conference that, because I was Zig's little protege and he was bringing me in to take his youth program and his character development program nationwide, worldwide, I'd sat at every meal and went to every function with Zig. I was his little guy. So Dr. Norman Vincent Peale and Robert Schuller, Ty Boyd, Robert Henry, Jeanne Robertson. I met them all at that particular conference.
Gosh.
My wife and I, as newlyweds, down to Dallas to his Born to Win seminar, our first seminar experience, 5 days. And it was there that Zig introduced me to somebody who introduced me to Nancy Reagan, who invited me into the Reagan White House. So between 83 and 89, I took Mrs. Reagan's Just Say No program to all 50 states and spoke in thousands of schools to millions of teenagers. So now, as I suggested, that I was one of two who invented the motivational school assembly. The other one was a dear friend, Mark Scherenbrock. But Scherenbrock, he was sponsored by Jostens, the ring and awards company.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I was sponsored by the Reagan White House. So he and I crossed paths so many times back in the day, speaking. And my formula was I spoke at 3 schools every single day, 15 a week. And then I'd fly home and regurgitate and come back out on the road. So for 140 school days a year between 83 and 89. And in that time frame, I do about 100 teacher in services and about 100 college university campuses. So in the world of the National Speakers Association, everybody thinks guys like me are completely full of crap because no one speaks that much. But if you just tally the number of students in every school, averaging probably 2,000 to 2,500 per school, and you do 3 of those a day, 15 a week for 140 school days a year, those were the days, and that's when I perfected my desire to become a master storyteller, all based on the mentorship that Zig gave me from 1982 until he passed away 30 years later. So the answer to your question is, I got into the speaking industry not because I thought I wanted to be a speaker and I sought that adrenaline rush from a standing ovation. I was called to do this, and proudly I've never missed a speech since 1982. And I've given over 6,000 speeches in 75 countries to most of the Fortune 500. And it's because I'm not a nobleman. I've never missed a speech because I know that it's a calling, that we have a job, and then we have a comfort zone, and then we have a job, and then we have a calling. And no one really can be a professional speaker unless we feel called. And my calling is this. I know for a fact, Jane, that in every one of my audiences, young and older, that there's at least one man and one woman who is hurting as badly as I was, who was suicidal, who had lost their identity. And I believe in my heart of hearts that if I can just say one thing, make them laugh, make them cry, make them think, make them feel, give them hope, give them real solutions, that I can save a life, keep somebody from taking their life, save a marriage, inspire somebody to pursue that entrepreneurial dream. And that's why I've never missed a speech. I've had flights canceled, and I've rented a car, driven 7 hours through the Badlands of Nebraska just to get to Rapid City, South Dakota in time to be a keynote speaker in a 3-day conference sponsored by the healthcare world of that state. And when I showed up, the man at the door is hugging me. The woman at the door is sobbing. I was the only speaker in a 3-day conference who showed up because of inclement weather, because I had a calling, because I knew that there was someone there that I knew I could inspire and help. And that's not being arrogant or self-serving, self-righteous. That just means that we owe it to each other. We truly are our brothers and sisters keepers. And whenever we can share some emotional stories, some meaningful humor, some talent to uplift humanity, we better rise to the occasion so that we don't die with our music still in us. And the goal of every person on this planet whom I'm close to, especially you, Jane Jenkins Herlong, you've always taught me and represent what Jeanne represents, to leave everybody saying, I like me best when I'm with you. I want to see you again. I like me best when I'm with you. I want to see you again. And I promise
so
I will not give you that long of an answer on question number 2.
Okay. Well, Dan, speaking of that, I'm curious, and I love that. And, you know, that's how I started out my speaking career, schools. And Nito always said, the school speakers who do the keynotes, and thank you for opening up that assembly for motivational speakers, because I was one. I don't know if you knew that, but I absolutely loved it. And I'm like you, I would do 3 a day forever. But my question is, being that you are an athlete and you are seeing so much happen in the world of sports, I mean, when you look at the pros or look at college football and you see these horrible accidents and it just grips you, do you speak to athletes? And I'm sure you do. And if you do, tell me about one of those experiences, because that's a big deal now.
Yeah, I've spoken to a lot of teams. I've worked with a lot of the teams in the National Football League. And my whole point, Jane, to your question is that, you know, you're going to battle. You know, football's not a contact sport. Dancing is a contact sport. Football is war. Football is a violent sport. And so it takes a special mentality and invincibility to want to go out there and hit somebody. But the significance of being able to compartmentalize and take that same level of passion and intensity and focus and preparation into your personal life and into the life of community of service before self is what the message is.
Yeah.
Because if you have your heart in the right place and you become injured or paralyzed, you don't lose your identity. You still have your faith. You still have your family, your support. And we are put in a position to teach the life lessons learned. Think about it. You and I would not have met. I would have never met Jeanne. I would have never met Zig. I would have never spoken to, 6 million people in 75 countries if I hadn't have been paralyzed. And
That's
because
right.
you and I are people of faith, God didn't paralyze me. Free will agency is the greatest gift of heaven. And no one, the scriptures teach us that, straight is the gate and narrow is the way that leads to eternal life, and few there be that find it. Nobody's going to be compelled to go to heaven, to obey, to be the best we can be. So what we need to do is continuously push ourselves to become to reach our ultimate capacity and potential as a human being. And when we're focused, that's the purpose of life, to become the strongest and best we can be, so that now we have strength to turn and lift someone else up and serve our fellow men and women, so that together we rise. That's the message to athletes. That's the message to actors, to dancers, to musicians, to superstars, is to focus in on why you're doing what you're doing. And regardless of the outcome, it's what we become in the process that makes us who we are, which makes my football injury one of the best things that ever happened to me. Not my pride.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's so many folks on the platform that have that passion that you have. And only when you have adversity, and Nito always said, adversity can be your friend. Yeah. And make it your friend so you can externalize. And I love that. But here, let's switch to Jeanne. We got to talk about, you mentioned to me how much Jeanne meant to you. You got to tell some Jeanne stories to everybody. Everybody loves Jeanne.
Well, Jeanne, she was exactly the same off stage as she was on stage. She's not just trying to be a comic. Too many of us know speakers and so-called humorists who have had someone write them a magnificent speech, and they've practiced it, but they're not professional speakers. They become professional presenters. They're nothing more than a Shakespearean actor where they have perfected their comedic timing for that specific bit. They have had someone write them a speech from hello to goodbye that's time tested, that is, nothing short of just memorizing and practicing your gestures and your punctuating pauses and all those platform skills that we've heard about. But then too often these individuals walk off stage, they have no personality. They're complete jerks. They don't interact with anyone on an authentic personal basis. They don't care. They just want to pick up the check and leave and go to the next audience. And they have this mindset that it's easier to change the audience than it is to change the speech. And they have one keynote, or they have this 45-minute set of just great jokes that they've practiced. Yes, that entertains. But because we're talking about the National Speakers Association, not comics who go from club to club, we have to understand that there's a difference, that there's a code of ethics, that you don't steal other people's material, that you use your own. You understand that the deeper your message, the higher your speaker's fee, which Jeanne teaches us, which all the CPAs seem to understand. But what Jeanne proved to us and always reminded us about is being the same off stage as you are on stage. If you're funny on stage, you better be funny off stage, or this is a joke. There's no in the National Speakers Association. Around Jeanne, and she'll just make these off the wall comments that just crack up everybody. And I remember flying, we were on the same flight, and she was sitting next to her left brain husband. We're sitting in first class flying to Hawaii, so it's quite a long flight. And I just remember, engaging in such a personal way, but she was always interested in everybody else around her. But I paused and just watched her in every situation, Jane. And I think the greatest compliment I could give Jeanne is when I asked her, how do you find your material? How do you continuously develop new material? And everyone would think that when Jeanne went to a party, when Jeanne went to a gala, when Jeanne went into a meeting, that she was the life of the party. Contraire, mon frère, no, she wasn't. She was sitting quietly, listening and watching other people and taking notes in her little pad so that she would remember when someone said something funny, when she remembered a situation in almost a sitcom set, and she would remember how she would set up a line or a joke or a statement based on the setting, based on the expressions, based on what was happening around her. And I'll never forget her reminding me about that on that airplane ride, saying, I said, Jeanne, teach me, how do you come up with the material? And she said, let's just sit here for a minute and just listen, just watch, see what's going on. The person going into the lavatory at the front of the plane and coming out with toilet paper hooked on the back of his pants, and he drags it down, and he's in an Armani, he's in a $2,000 Armani suit, and he's got toilet paper hanging out the back. I mean, there's got to be a story there. There's got to be a great.
Well, to me, she was probably doing some character development, like, okay, I can use that in one of my stories, or she always would go to the, you're so right, Dan, she'd go to the flight attendants. That was the funniest thing you've ever seen. Yeah.
When you can actually hone in on your own personal experience, that's where the magic occurs. And it was from that time that I've since created what I call my speaker's triangle. When I coach speakers, and one of my books is called Speak Like a Pro, another one of my books is called Story Selling. Breaking down the brain chemicals that we can actually control if we want to ignite adrenaline or endorphin or dopamine or serotonin or oxytocin, eliminate triggering cortisol. All we have to do is index our stories. Which stories make people laugh? Which stories make people think? Which stories make people feel? Which makes stories make people want to give more empathetic. You index your stories, and then you itemize which brain chemical is triggered when you share that story. And then you can craft a magnificent, customized keynote based on your audience and who they are and what the challenges are of the event planner, and tell the story that will trigger that brain chemical that will change or influence the decision-making or head-heart connection of the audience. It's brilliant. It's so exciting.
It is incredible.
If you think about it, every person in the world, in every conversation, one-on-one, one on 12 in a boardroom, one on 20,000 in an arena, craves the answers to 3 questions. And if you want to be a transformational speaker, a transactional leader, only focuses on the head, the what and the how. But if you want to be a transformational speaker, you connect the head and the heart, the how and the what with the why and the want. And so we need to answer these 3 questions in every conversation. Number 1, why should I listen to you? Have you done it? Are you currently doing it? It's the credibility piece. Mm-hmm. Question 2, can I do it too? With my past, with my weaknesses, with my limitations, and with my strengths. It's the possibility piece. And now I've created a visual funnel. So if you answer question number 1, why should I listen to you? Credibility. Can I do it too? Use possibility. It begs the question, can I do it? How do I do it? What's the system? It's the usability piece. Credibility, possibility, usability. And so when we share stories and choose the right story that will trigger the correct brain chemical that will inspire or influence the decision or thinking or feeling of the audience member, we can actually take our communication and our speaking to the highest level possible. And so what we need to do to consolidate this part of our conversation is to make sure that everybody knows you have stories that are worth sharing. You just have to take the time to figure out what the life lessons are. And there's 4 areas from which we can find our material if you're looking for content creation. Number 1, your life. Number 2, your transitional experiences, going from school to school, graduating from school, getting your first job, falling in love, falling out of love, getting married, getting divorced, whatever the case may be. The third is significant emotional events, where you can actually measure and quantify how you believe, what you believed, and how you behaved before it occurred, and how you now think differently and behave differently because it occurred. The 2 operative words, before and because, before and because. And a significant emotional event, I was paralyzed. The death of my dad, maybe the birth of one of your children or all of your children. Not just a divorce, but a devastating divorce. Whatever that significant emotional event is. And then the 4th source of material content creation comes from bucket list. What do you want to do next that will give you an extraordinary experience that you can share, that will enhance your credibility? Who do you want to interview? Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? And in that environment, it's amazing how you now can reverse engineer, answer all 3 questions in every single story and make it funny, evocative, and emotional. So you take people on an emotional roller coaster ride so they remember. And that's the significance of Jeanne Robertson effect, Jane Jenkins Hurlon effect, and some of the greats, probably most of the greats that stand above and beyond, even those who are also CPAEs like you. And I'm striving every day to throw myself into that heap, because that's the significance. We go to the Kentucky Derby, they're all champions, they're all CPAEs, but still only one wins the roses. So we need to keep pushing ourselves to become the most extraordinary communicator, authentic human being we can possibly be. Sorry to interrupt.
Next question. I love that. I love that. So my question is, I'd love to share this with those of us who strive to be better on the platform. So when you send out a pre-question questionnaire or talk to the meeting planner, do you talk about the triangle? Or like when I send mine out, I'll say, what do you want your audience to walk away with? And that's when I get granular with the meeting planner. Is that kind of what you do? Or do you address the triangle effect?
Well, I think the triangle is just between us speakers. It's just kind of what my formula is. And that would kind of, that would cloud the conversation. I loved how direct your question is. So I always ask 4 questions. What's your theme?
Yeah, I got that.
Because I'm a songwriter, I got some gold records in country music. I know that the hook is what sells the song. You're a beautiful singer. You're an amazing musician and artist. I know that. Everybody should know that about you. But it's the hook that sells the song. My buddy Tim Nichols, he writes "Live Like You're Dying," recorded by Tim McGraw. The Dance, Garth Brooks. I could have missed the pain, but I would have missed the dance. Trisha Yearwood, the song remembers when. It's the hook that sells the song. So as a songwriter, I want to hone in. I want to focus in, sharpen the tip of the spear as quickly as I can in my conversation, in my pre-conference call with the event planner, the meeting professional, or the senior organizational leaders. So I want some sort of a snapshot. I want a catchy phrase that they come up with. Most of the, so often they don't, so I have to create one. But my first question is, what's your theme? Here's a classic example. Oh, this year's theme is over the rainbow. And I'm like, wow, what does that mean to you? Well, last year's theme coming out of COVID was weather the storm. So as a songwriter, on my pad of paper during this pre-conference call, I write, instead of running from the storm, isn't it time to learn how to dance in the rain? So that's a visual for me to go back to and kind of start to massage. So now I know in a conversation, how in the world did you come up with this hook, this theme, and what does it mean to you? If they don't have a theme, then I automatically default to, do you have a catchphrase? Do you have buzz phrase? Do you have a marketing line that everybody is familiar with? So that becomes the theme, and I write it down under theme. Second question, what is the purpose of your meeting? So
that's a good one.
Is it networking? Is it a vendor customer event? Is it continuous education? Do they have to get continuous education units because they're, a realtor or an insurance agent or whomever, whatever the case may be? I want to know what the purpose of the meeting is. Is it an incentive meeting? Are we meeting in Cabo and everybody's bringing a guest and a spouse or significant other, and I'm the IRS speaker? In other words, they've got to write it off as a business meeting. So what do they want? What's the purpose? I want to know. Third question is, who are the attendees? And I want to know, what do they do when they wake up? So if they're sales professionals selling medical devices, I want to know, do they sell to the medical group manager? Do they sell to the nurses? Do they sell to specifically and directly to the physicians? Do they sell to the hospitals? I want to know the names of their highest volume items. If they're selling computers, if they're selling software, I want to know the serial number. I want to know the product name. I want to know if they're selling if they're selling office furniture, what's their highest selling item and what's their lowest selling item, so we can talk about passion, creativity, and imagination. I want to know everything I can know about the attendees. And here's the kicker question. Are you paying them to come, or do they pay their own way in an association meeting? Because that changes the motivation. If they are there on their own dime and I'm on the program, I better figure out a way for them to choose me, so that they choose me, not just somebody who does what I do as the speaker, as that slot on their program, which now massages maybe what the new title is, even though the message is the same, whatever the case may be. I want to know who the attendees are. And then here's how I customize every speech. I always ask, I want the name of someone who's a visible name in the company, who's like a first responder, first contact, a receptionist perhaps, who always answers the phone, or a team member who's in the support role, who never gets any credit, who never gets any thank you or public recognition. And I'm going to make sure that he or she is put on a pedestal for a couple of minutes in front of the group. I also want to know the superstar, and if there's several divisions, the superstar at each of those divisions, who sells more or who has better ratings or whatever the case may be, so I can highlight them by name, and I memorize their names before my speech, so I can personalize it. I also want the name of somebody who is the life of the party, who I know can take a joke. And my specification is somebody who plays way too much golf. So the classic line would be, when I'm an MC of an awards banquet, I love to yank people's chains by saying, tonight we're here celebrating what people say behind your back. Let it pause, let it percolate, they kind of giggle. And I said, think about it. No one would be getting an award tonight if someone hadn't been talking about you behind your back and nominated for this award. What are people saying behind your back? Where's Jeanne Jenkins Hurlong? And everybody kind of giggles and, she raises her hand, he raises it. I was like, you know what they're saying about you, Jeanne? You play so much golf, you actually gather friends together to show them slides of work. Now everybody laughs, and now they know that I know something about a key individual in the organization, and I can customize.
Oh, Dan, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. I'm just telling you right now.
But then I always nail, I don't leave him or her as a lone survivor. I'll roast like 2 or 3 other people. But then the final question is your question. And the way I word it is, okay, what's your desired message? So in the pre-conference call, I share, here's my core content that I cover in every speech. I talk about highest level leadership, and I always talk about my 3 steps: expand belief, elevate expectations, and empower behavior. But my illustrations for those 3 steps change depending on what you want me to talk about based on your theme, the specific challenges of your people, and what your expectations are of my speech. Because so often I would suspect that Jeannie would finish a magnificent speech and have the event planner come up and say, I wanted so badly for you to tell that baton story and you didn't.
Oh, I know. So many people do that have heard you. Yeah.
Dan, I wanted so badly for you to tell your famous Bellman story or your raise the bar story and you didn't. So what we have to do is make sure that we allow the event planner to itemize their expectations. And what I say is, what is your desired message? What would you be saying? Not if you were me, but if you were you and I was in the back of the room and you were talking to the people so that I could stand up and echo exactly what was on your mind and what was in your heart and what's important to you.
Well, that's funny you say that because I started doing that too.
Now they start telling me exactly the message that they want me to share. And in your words, much more eloquent than mine, what do you want them to leave with? How can I help you as the third party advocate to make your meeting everything that it has the potential to be?
I had someone, I said, give me 3 things you want folks to walk away with. And it was a group, I can't remember, it was a couple of years ago. We want to be empowered. We want to push through COVID or be on the other side of COVID. And we want to be motivated. I mean, I'm just using that. I can't really remember. But my speech was called, because I read the Sweet Tea book, Sweet Tea Secrets to Empower, Push Through, and Encourage.
See,
so I'm thinking,
perfect.
See, and they get exactly what they wanted. Now we got, speaking of singing, we got to tell the story.
Oh, yeah.
We got, it was God Bless America, right? Yep.
Here we go. Well, I'll just tell the whole details. Maybe you forgot. Maybe you blocked it out on purpose.
No, it's brilliant. Well, to me, it's hilarious.
Here's what happened. It's a classic Jeanne Robertson story. She always shares personal experiences. And this is just crazy. And you fill in the blanks if I forget anything, but I've told it a few times, so it's so fresh on my mind. So when I've been in NSA for a while, and Jane comes in, and everyone knows that she's this beauty queen, Miss South Carolina. Everyone knows she's got this gorgeous voice, sings like a bird. Everyone knows she's drop dead gorgeous beauty on the outside and a beautiful soul inside. And everyone knows she's the consummate, polished, professional entertainer. Everybody knows this. So Jane shows up, I show up, Willie Giles shows up, and this other lady who's a great singer, she shows up. And who's ever producing the opening session says, okay, so we've spent this fortune on this set. Now visualize this set, where they came up with the money. It's a cascading staircase that comes down kind of from the ceiling that kind of curves around and comes to the ground, the stage. And there's a railing on one side of it. And their idea was to have Jeanne Herlong, Miss South Carolina, come walking down the staircase and join the four of us. And because they'd spent so much money on this set, and I'm crazy, man, I say, hey, I got a better idea. On one of my albums, I took a leaf from Elvis Presley's trilogy where he sang 3 songs together and ended with, glory, glory, hallelujah at the end. And I had recorded my version of it. So I had the performance tape professionally, recorded with a live orchestra, the whole deal on one of my albums. So I say to the planning committee, hey, I've got the performance track all ready to go. Jeanne Herlong, she starts on step number 1 at the top of the staircase, and she starts walking down the staircase singing America the Beautiful. Oh, beautiful, gracious skies. And she gets to the end, America, America.
From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans, where we born, God bless America, my home, sweet home.
And so by the time she gets to the bottom, about the 4th step from the bottom, I'm going to come in from the back door of the ballroom with the cordless mic. And I'm going to come walking up the aisles singing the first verse and chorus of God Bless the USA by Lee Greenwood, and time it perfectly so that I walk up the steps of the front of the stage and I get to Jeanne by the time I sing God Bless the USA, and I reach up and gracefully and gently grab or hold her hand, guide her down the last 4 stairs.
That's right.
Of the cascading staircase, and then turn and together sing the Battle Hymn of the Republic with that crescendo, holding hands, their hands raised, hitting that high A with a giant American flag that we've rented hanging from the ceiling and drops down behind us. Bam! And the crowd goes nuts, and it's the greatest opening act in the history of the National Speakers Association. And then I say, you know what? This is such an extraordinary, epic event. And everybody agreed, we need a fog machine. And they're all like, yeah. I said, I'll get the fog machine. I'll take care of it. Everything's going to be perfect. And they said, okay. So we show up that morning. Jeanne, I love you forever. We show up that morning. We haven't rehearsed it with the fog machine. I've never used one. In those days, it was the first fog machine. So it stood about 3 feet off the ground, and it had a nozzle on it about this big. The smoke would come out, and it only had 2 options: turn it on or turn it off. And so think about the logistics. So I've positioned the fog machine underneath the cascading staircase so no one can see it.
Right.
And the nozzle's facing the audience, coming out from underneath the stairs. So Jeanne has positioned herself at the top of the staircase. I'm backstage, ready to push play, start the fog machine. And then I've got to sprint out the side door, run all the way behind this ballroom, and come back to the back door of the ballroom in time for me to get my microphone and start walking up the aisle towards the stage to sing God Bless the USA. Well, the audience is now seated. They're excited for the opening. And there's 2,500 probably people there. Jeanne's in position. And I push play. I push start on the fog machine and out the door, sprint down that back hall to get to the back of the room, ready to waltz up the aisle to sing. And by the time I get to the back door, I can't even see Jeanne. So much People in the audience they're dying of emphysema. They're dying of smoke inhalation.
Oh, God.
Sulfur smell is so thick. People are crying. Jane is coughing. She's starting to come down this cascading staircase. You can't even see her. She's having a hard time hitting the notes because her nostrils are pulled down. She gets to the fourth step. She's hanging on because she can't see. I start walking up the aisle, and our best friends, Larry Wingate, McCain, all these guys are in the front row, and they're laughing their guts out. I'm trying to hold my composure. I go walking past them. I walk up. I'm trying to find Jane's hand. I reach up down the last 4 steps, and together, in the midst of this smoke inhalation, we try to finish singing the battle hymn of the Republic when the flag goes down. And Jane has never forgiven me, humiliated.
No.
I walk off the stage, and here's the kicker. You got to remember this part. So Scott McCain, Mark Sanborn, who's the consummate professional speaker. He doesn't come out and dink around. He doesn't walk around. He comes out and pauses that Cavett Robert, pose with his legs spread, with his microphone, this consummate professional stance. He comes out in front of the staircase and he poses this speech and gets ready to talk. And when I ran off stage, I didn't push off. I pushed the switch to the middle part, and it was syncopated. So within the first 15 seconds of Mark Sanborn's opening remarks as the president, this puff of smoke shooting out from under the shirt. He loses his train of thought. He's like, "What's going on?" It's like downtown Baghdad. It's like he's trying to speak. And needless to say, I'm still backstage. I ran over and unplugged it from the wall. That was the end of the fog machine, and then cut to the chase. I was so humiliated. Yeah, we're laughing about it. I'm going, oh my gosh. I didn't pay attention to the fog machine, and by the end of the day, someone had stolen it. And I got an invoice from the company, and I had to pay $600 for a stolen fog machine. That was the disaster of all disasters, opening ceremony. And from then on, Jane and I have been, we've laughing our guts out, girlfriend. I am so sorry. Oh my
gosh. No, that was so funny because I remember when I met you finally, I said to you, "Where have you been? You're one of the only people that's a motivational, funny guy that sings." And I've been trying to pull it all together. And then you and I end up doing that song together. And all I remember is walking down the steps with my hand out. And I put the mic down and I went, "Where are you? Where are you, Dan? I cannot see you." And I heard, "I'm right here." And you were right here like this. And I'm going, "I can't find you." I forgot about the syncopation, or whatever you call it, with Mark. Oh my gosh, that's cruel. He is so well put together and so professional. I forgot about that. But the funniest memory I have is leaving the convention, and we were great in rehearsal. It was just that fog machine. And I saw you. I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Somebody stole the fog machine." You were buried in that paperwork. I said, "What the heck?" That was hilarious. Oh my gosh.
That's in the true spirit of Jeanne, I mean, it's a great story. It's your story. It's my story.
Oh gosh, that's funny. Oh.
Only certain audiences that would appreciate that, maybe an NSA, maybe a Toastmasters, it doesn't matter. But again, we look for things like that. And you know what, that story, it was a disaster. It was a total disaster that we can laugh about. But it reminds me of Merle Haggard, the great superstar country singer, songwriter. And one time he was asked, "Hey, Earl, you haven't written any hit songs for a while. Why?" He says, "My marriage is going too good." Oh, when Merle has to look for pain to create awesome experiences, it's okay. So sometimes it's just amusing to be able to turn that lemon into lemonade, as they've said for so many centuries.
So funny. Well, I want
every experience.
Oh yeah, everyone is valuable if you could, because it seems like you can see things better when your heart is broken or happy. You know, it's funny. But I want you to tell everybody how to get in touch with you, because you're burning up the platform. You're doing everything right. I love this. I'm hoping that some of our up and coming speakers will. I'm going to send this out to our chapter, because what you said was beyond brilliant about the triangle. I'm telling you.
You
And
know,
that's where I hate to say it, you do have to make money to
yeah,
keep this business going. And that's where the money is when you can go to the next level and just granularly think and really challenge the meeting planner. Let's get down with this and let's make this so valuable. And that's how you get asked back. It's
yep,
just repeat and referred.
yep.
Getting re-invited and referred is huge. It is just huge. So tell everybody how to get in touch with you, Dan.
Point, my contact management system, it actually allows me to record, to write down every story, every joke, every anecdote, every statistics that I would use in that speech. So as soon as I'm finished, because I'm spontaneous, you know, we call it practice spontaneity, where you memorize 10 one-liners, you memorize these great jokes. And I've been doing this for 4 decades, and I've maintained, you know, I've been at the top of our game all these years. You know, back in the day when I would speak hundreds of times with schools and then transition to the corporate arena, you know, having finished 2023 with 85 speeches, I'm really proud of that.
No kidding.
It's because of my contact management system. So the second I'm through, I write down every story I tell, and my stories have a title. They have a word, 1 word or 2 or 3 word title.
It's been remarkable. I just love you. I miss you.
You're so amazing.
You have just, what an education. Just sitting here, I am so wowed by all that you've done and continue to do. And you taught me so much just in this 1 hour plus. It's been amazing. It really has.
Well, bucket list, you know, we all need to just keep that bucket list alive, active, and well. And that's got to be one of my bucket list items, is to reconnect with Jeanne, with you, my dear. And reiterate to the world, you know, we can connect online. You know, we've heard from Dr. Jim Rohn, who he called me a few weeks before he passed away. He was also one of my mentors. And most people don't give him credit, but he was the one that coined, we become the average of the 5 people we associate with the most.
Absolutely.
I want to add to that a Max Lucado quote, which means we must be willing to pay any price and travel any distance to associate with extraordinary human beings, even online. So I appreciate this opportunity. But
I love you, honey.
The significance of meeting in events industry, I just hope so badly that we, as professional speakers, can keep inspiring these event planners to bring in Hall of Fame speakers who will never bomb, who will rely on our bucket list experiences to inspire your people, and take the events industry to the highest level that it always has the potential to reach. And you're the one.
You know, well, you're sweet, honey. Jeannie always said, you grow with your audience. You will always have an audience. And brother, she lived that message. She carried people with her in the process of getting older, getting wiser. And she was at the top of her game, sadly, when she left us. But she proved that point. You can take your audiences with you anywhere you go. I love that. And I love you. And thank you, darling. You were wonderful.